The wind howled across the snow-crusted plain like a hungry ghost, whipping dry pine needles and ashes from old campfires into the air. Clara's fingers, stiff and swollen from cold, gripped the thin shawl around her shoulders. Her boots cracked, and mismatched sank into the icy mud as she stumbled forward, her breath coming in short, visible clouds. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, hadn't slept properly in even longer. The rancher who promised her work threw her out when she refused. His filthy offer. She hadn't even taken her wages, just grabbed her satchel and ran before his dogs caught up. Now the mountains loomed like silent judges, and she was lost somewhere between the land of the settlers and the Apache, the villagers she'd passed days. Uggo had warned her, "Don't cross the line, that's Apache land. You disappear out." There, but hunger doesn't obey warnings. And Clara had no one left to miss her dot, so when she saw smoke rising from a distant grove, she walked toward it. Even if it meant death, at least it would be warm. Her knees gave out just at the edge of a thick pine clearing. She collapsed, face down in the dirt, too exhausted to cry, too cold to feel much beyond the dull ache of her body giving up. The silence that followed was complete until soft footsteps approached. "Is she dead?" A young voice whispered. "No," said another, identical in pitch and softness. "She's breathing, see?" Clara felt small hands turn her over. 2 young girls no older than 9 were kneeling beside her, dressed in long buckskin tunics, their black hair braided with tiny feathers and beads. They looked exactly alike. "Water," one said. "Get the gourd." She was too weak to resist as one tipped her head up gently and poured cool water into her mouth. The shock of it brought tears to Clara's eyes. "Where?" she croaked. "You crossed the edge," one of them said with a calmness that didn't match her age. "You're on our land now." Clara tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness dropped her back. "I didn't mean to just cold, hungry." The girls exchanged glances, then nodded as if silently agreeing on something. "We'll help you, but you have to come with us." Clara blinked. "Why?" They looked at each other again, then one leaned in closer. "Because you want a home," she said softly. "And we need a bride for our father," the other added. "He's a giant Apache warrior. But don't worry, he won't hurt you." Clara didn't know whether to laugh or panic. Surely this was a dream or madness. She had wandered into Apache territory, collapsed from exhaustion, and now twin. Girls were offering her a home and a husband? Still, the warmth in their dark eyes wasn't threatening. They weren't dragging her. They were offering. "Your father sent you?" She whispered. "No," said the first, "but he'll listen. He always listens to us." They helped her to her feet, each girl slipping under one of her arms with surprising strength. Together, they walked toward the smoke Clara had seen earlier. Through a small trail in the pines, a hidden village came into view. 6 lodges made of earth and bark, thin trails of smoke rising into the gray morning sky. It was quiet, but not lifeless. She could hear distant movement drums, a baby's cry, the chopping of wood. As they neared the center, people began to emerge silent, observant. A few older women raised their brows at Clara's ragged state, but no one stopped them. "She needs food," one girl announced, "and a blanket," said the other. A woman stepped forward and handed Clara a warm hide blanket without a word. Another brought a bowl of stew. Clara collapsed by the nearest fire pit and ate, her hands trembling. And still the girls didn't leave her side. "You're not like the other strangers," said one. "You didn't look afraid," said the other. "Was," Clara replied weakly. "Still am." They both smiled. "You'll be safe now," one whispered. "Our father will see. And if he agrees, you'll never have to be cold again," said the other. Clara looked up, a faint fire beginning to flicker in her chest. She had nothing. No home, no name that mattered. No reason to keep running. But maybe, just maybe, this was the strange, wild beginning of something that could save her. Even if it came from the daughters of a giant, Apache warrior. Clara woke to the soft rustle of pine branches and the faint crackle of a low fire. The blanket around her was heavy and warm, smelling of smoke, earth, and something wild she couldn't name. For a few seconds, she forgot where she was until the voices returned. "She's awake," said one of the twins. "She didn't run away," said the other, sounding pleased. Clara sat up slowly. The ache in her limbs was deep, but not unbearable now. Someone had wrapped her hands, scrubbed the dirt from her face, even braided her hair loosely. The bowl of stew from last night had been refilled, steaming beside her. "You did all this?" Clara asked, looking at the girls. They nodded in unison. "I didn't even ask your names." "I'm Luma," said the one with the longer braid. "I'm Nahi," said the one with the feather tied near her temple. "We're 10. Our mother's spirit watches us still, but father, he's alone." Clara wrapped the blanket tighter. "You said you want me to marry your father. I'm not sure you understand how big a thing that is." Nahi crouched beside her. "We understand. He's strong and he's good, but since our mother died, he's become too quiet. He hunts. He protects us, but his heart is locked." Luma added, "He says he doesn't need a wife, but he's wrong. And you're different. We felt it." Clara couldn't help a soft laugh, though it cracked with uncertainty. "You just met me." "Mother once said a woman without a home is like a hawk without wings," Luma whispered. "You look like that hawk." Clara looked into the fire. She didn't believe in fate, not really. But something about the girl's words settled in her chest like warmth. Still, the idea of being pushed into marriage even by well-meaning children terrified her. "I'm not sure your father would want a stranger forced on him," she said gently. "You won't be forced," Nahi said, standing up. "We just want you to meet him. If he says no, you can go. If you say no, you can go. But if he says yes, and you say yes... Luma took her hand. "Then you'll have a home." A home. That word hadn't meant anything to Clara in years. She'd wandered from job to job, washing clothes, cleaning rooms, helping with births, never staying long. Always someone else's problem. Always someone else's burden. And now, two wild-eyed girls were offering her a path into something else. "Where is he?" she asked softly. The girls grinned. "Follow us." They led her through the pines, deeper into the shaded part of the forest where few others had ventured. The air smelled of cedar and snow. The sounds of the village grew faint behind them. "He stays out here," Nahi explained, skipping ahead. "Lightly. Says the forest clears his head. And sometimes he makes fire without flint," Luma said proudly. Clara raised an eyebrow. "He sounds interesting." "He's a warrior," Nahi said. "He fought to protect this land. He still does." Clara was about to ask more, but they stopped suddenly at the edge of a clearing. "He's there," Nahi whispered. Clara stepped forward and froze. The man by the fire was tall. Not just tall, immense. A wall of muscle and dark, scarred skin. He was shirtless, his broad back to her, working a stone blade against a piece of wood. His hair was long and tied back with a leather cord, and his arms moved with the slow, steady rhythm of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. Luma whispered, "His name is Tohono." Clara swallowed. He looked like something from an ancient world, strong, wild, and still as the mountains. As if sensing her presence, he turned. His face was striking. High cheekbones, a hard jaw, and eyes like obsidian. He didn't speak, didn't move. Just watched her. Clara felt the girls beside her press her forward. "She's the one," Nahi said boldly. Tohono looked at them, then back at Clara. "I didn't ask for a bride," he said in a low, gravelly voice. "And I didn't ask for this," Clara replied. But I didn't run either. He rose slowly to his full height, the fire casting gold across his bare chest, catching on old battle scars. The silence between them was not cold, but charged, full of something unspoken. "She is tired," Luma said, "and alone." "She needs warmth," Nahi added. "So do you." Tohono looked at the girls, then back at Clara. "You came willingly?" he asked. Clara met his gaze. "I came looking for shelter, not marriage. But I'll hear what you have to say." He gave the smallest nod, more acknowledgement than approval. "Then eat," he said, motioning to a pot near the fire. "We will speak when the wind quiets." And with that, Clara sat down beside the fire of the giant Apache warrior her fate suddenly tangled with, his in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The warmth of the fire seeped into Clara's bones as she sat cross-legged in the clearing, across from the towering Apache warrior called Tohono. He didn't speak much. He hadn't offered a smile, but he hadn't told her to leave either. And that, for now, was enough. He moved like a mountain, slow, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Shirtless in the cold air, his skin was bronzed and battle-worn, marked with faded scars and faded ink along his arms. His presence radiated quiet power, but there was no arrogance in it, just control. The twins, Luma and Nahi, had gone to fetch more wood. For now, it was just Clara and the man whose daughters believed she should be his bride. He stirred the pot with a thick stick, never looking directly at her. Finally, he broke the silence. "You smell of fear," he said. Clara blinked. "I suppose I do. I've been chased, starved, turned away. Fear stays with you after that." He nodded once, slowly. "But you didn't run when you saw me." "I've seen worse than a shirtless giant with a sword on his hip," she said, her voice dry with exhaustion. "Besides, your daughters offered me kindness when no one else would." That made his eyes flick up, dark and piercing, assessing. "They have soft hearts," he said. "Too soft for this world." "Maybe, but soft hearts brought me soup." "And a blanket." Tohono didn't answer right away. He stood and walked a few steps away, kneeling beside a log where his tools were laid out: stones, leather, strips of sinew, arrows being fletched. "You think I want a wife because they brought you here?" he asked without turning around. "I don't know what you want," Clara replied, honest. "I don't even know what I want, except a roof and a reason to stop running." He turned then slowly and met her gaze. His bare chest rose and fell with steady breaths, and his expression was unreadable. "I buried my wife 5 winters ago," he said. "A white sickness took her. Fast. The girl saw it all." Clara's throat tightened. "I'm sorry. She was not from here. She had fire in her." "Like you." That surprised her. "You think I have fire in me?" "I think you came here half dead, and you still held your head up when I looked at you." "Most women would have begged to be taken back to the settler roads." Clara shrugged. "There's nothing left for me there." Tohono came closer. Not menacingly, just enough to let the firelight catch his features again. His face was hard, but not cruel. There was pain in the set of his mouth and restraint in his silence. "My daughters want a mother," he said quietly. "But I will not take a woman who doesn't choose this." Clara's heartbeat quickened. She hadn't expected him to be honorable. Not after all the things people said about Apache warriors. But this man spoke plainly, respectfully, and with control that seemed like it came from deep within. "And what if I'm just grateful for the food and fire?" she asked carefully. "Then you'll be gone by morning," he replied. "No harm. No force." His answer made her chest loosen with relief and something else. Curiosity. "You don't seem desperate for a bride." "I'm not," he said simply. "I have peace and solitude." But they miss a woman's touch. They miss softness in the lodge. And he hesitated for the first time. "I miss not being alone." Clara stared at him. This enormous, fierce-looking man had just admitted the one thing no other man in her life ever had, that he wanted something beyond control, that he wanted connection. She wasn't sure what to say, but her hands, still wrapped in soft leather strips, reached for the bowl he had offered earlier. She ate slowly, silently, while he resumed shaping arrows at his log. They didn't speak again for a long time. But the silence wasn't cold now, it was companionable. Something like a beginning. And as the wind died down and the sky deepened to a pale amber glow, Clara realized something. She wasn't afraid of Tohono, she was curious. And for a woman who'd been wandering in fear for years, that was a powerful shift. The sky had faded to dusky gray by the time the twins returned to the clearing, their small arms full of pine branches. Luma dropped hers near the fire, while Nahi came and knelt beside Clara, checking her hands with a mother's touch. She ate, Nahi told her father proudly. And she didn't cry, Clara smiled faintly. Not yet, anyway. Tohono barely nodded, his focus still on shaping arrow shafts. Clara watched him in the firelight, the muscles across his bare back shifting with every movement, his silence heavy, like a shield no one had pierced in a long time. He's always like this, Luma whispered behind her hand. Quiet, but he listens. I'm not sure he wants to listen to this, Clara replied softly, as if hearing that. Tohono rose from his place and turned to face them. The twins straightened immediately, like deer sensing the forest shift. Clara followed their gaze and stood too, though her knees still ached. I did not ask you to bring her, he said firmly to the girls, his voice deep and quiet, like distant thunder. We know, Nahi said without fear. But we chose her, added Luma. Like you always say, we must choose carefully. I said no such thing about forcing a woman into our home. We didn't force her, Clara said, stepping forward, her voice steady even though her heart pounded. I came on my own feet. They only offered warmth, and I accepted. Tohono's eyes met hers. There was no softness there, but also no anger. Just the kind of stare that tested a person's soul. You think being here makes you brave? He asked. No, she answered. But staying here might. That got a flicker, a shift in his jaw, almost a smirk. Almost. Clara stepped closer, wrapping the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Let's not pretend your daughters aren't the ones making this decision for you. You say you don't want a wife, but they're already halfway convinced I belong here. Tohono crossed his arms over his broad chest, the firelight painting his torso in shadows and gold. I don't need a wife, he growled. I need peace. I need silence, not chatter and soft footsteps in the night. Then you should have built your lodge on a mountaintop, Clara shot back. The twins gasped. No one had ever spoken to him like that, not even the village elders. Tohono's eyes narrowed, but not with rage. There was surprise there. And something else. Respect. Clara didn't stop. I didn't ask to marry you. I didn't ask to be brought here. I don't know your ways, your world, or even how to keep up with those two little firecrackers. She glanced at the girls. But I've lived through worse than cold silence and rough hands. If this is a home with rules and dignity, I'll follow them. But don't look at me like I'm one of your warriors trying to prove something. Silence settled like a heavy cloak over the clearing. Then finally, he spoke again, low and measured. My wife died with her hand in mine. I buried her beneath a hawthorn tree, wrapped in the white deerskin I hunted for her wedding. That pain carved a place inside me that no one fills. Not even my daughters. The air seemed to still. I don't want to pretend I can replace her, Clara whispered. You couldn't, he replied. But the girls are right. You are different. You didn't come here begging. You came here with tired eyes and an unbroken spirit. She blinked. That was the first kind thing he'd said. Tohono turned his gaze toward the trees, where snow had started falling gently between the branches. You will sleep in the empty lodge tonight, alone, No decision made. No bond spoken. Clara nodded slowly. Fair enough. He looked at the girls. Take her there and stop meddling. They nodded, but both were smiling as they took Clara's hands and led her toward a nearby lodge that smelled of cedar and earth. Inside, it was empty but clean. A fur-lined cot sat in the corner. A pot of warm water had already been placed near the fire pit. As the girls said goodnight, Clara looked over her shoulder. Tohono stood just beyond the trees, watching the smoke rise, shirtless even in the cold. He did not wave, did not speak. But he lingered. She wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, for the first time in years, she had a roof. A fire, and a feeling deep in her chest that maybe, just maybe, this wild place, this silent man, could offer her something more than mere survival. Maybe it could become something like home. Clara awoke to the distant rhythm of a drum and the smell of wood smoke in her nose. For a moment, she forgot where she was, the lodge, the girls, the giant Apache warrior who said he didn't need a wife. But then she opened her eyes and saw the ceiling above her, made of bark and woven branches, and it all came rushing back. She wasn't on the run anymore. She wasn't begging for shelter. She was in his village. She didn't know if she was staying, but she knew she had to try. Clara stepped out into the morning chill, wrapped in her borrowed blanket. The village was already stirring. Women were grinding corn. Smoke coiled from low fires, and the scent of boiled herbs drifted through the air. She spotted the twins carrying bundles of firewood like little warriors, their braids bouncing. Waved when they saw her. She offered a soft smile in return, but not everyone greeted her so kindly. Several of the older women watched her from a distance, their eyes unreadable. One elder, tall and stone-faced, whispered something to another as Clara passed. Clara didn't need to hear the words to know what they meant. Outside her. She kept her head high and walked toward the main fire circle. Tohono was already there, crouched beside the flames, shirtless once again, hammering something into shape with a stone and iron tool. His back rippled with motion, marked by old scars and streaks of ash from a ritual she didn't understand. He didn't look up when she approached. I want to help, Clara said quietly. Still, he said nothing. I won't just sit in your lodge and wait for your daughters to decide if I'm mother material. If I stay, I'll earn it. He paused, then slowly set the tools down. You're not one of us, he said plainly. I know. You don't know our language, our ways, our winters. Clara stepped closer. Then teach me, or let someone teach me. But don't expect me to sit here like a broken doll, waiting for a man to change his mind. Tohono finally looked at her. The way his dark eyes studied her, it wasn't unkind, but it was testing. He was used to strength. He respected fire. He was seeing if hers was real. You cook? He asked. I do. You sew? Well enough. You ever skin a deer? Clara hesitated. I've plucked chickens. A slight twitch of amusement in his jaw. Follow, he said. He led her to the women's lodge. A handful of women sat around large woven baskets of dried roots and corn. They stopped when Clara entered. The elder woman who'd whispered earlier stood slowly, her long silver braid trailing over her shoulder. This is Wapan, Tohono said. She doesn't like you. Wapan's sharp eyes narrowed at the comment, but she said nothing. Clara crossed her arms. That makes two of us. Tohono almost smirked again. She will teach you what you must know. If she sees you quit, you go. Clara nodded once. Fair. He left without another word. The next few hours were grueling. Wapan gave her no breaks, no kindness, and no instructions more than once. Clara was expected to watch, to copy, to keep up. Her hands ached from grinding corn, her back burned from hauling firewood, and her legs trembled as she helped hang strips of drying meat. And still, She refused to falter when the basket slipped from her hands and spilled dried roots across the cold dirt. She dropped to her knees and gathered every piece without complaint. When one of the younger women whispered something in Apache and laughed, Clara met her eyes with a look that stopped the laughter cold. By sunset, her arms were trembling. Her nails were dirty. Her lips were cracked, but she hadn't run. Tohono watched her from a distance, his daughters curled beside him. The firelight flickered across his chest as he sat silently, observing. She didn't cry. Nah, he said. She didn't leave, added Luma. He gave a small nod. No, she didn't. Later that evening, as the fire cast long shadows on the dirt, Clara returned to the same clearing where she'd met him. She didn't wait for permission, just sat down across from him, her knees muddy, her hands raw. You wanted to see if I'd quit, she said tiredly. No, Tohono replied. I wanted to see what you'd do when no one helped you. And what did I do? He looked at her, eyes steady, voice low. You worked like a woman who meant to stay. Clara didn't smile. She was too exhausted, but the warmth in his words filled her more than food or fire. She'd earned no promises, but she'd earned something, and for now, that was enough. Following days blurred together with labor, observation, and slow learning. Clara began waking before the sun, her body aching in new places each morning. She washed hides beside the women, helped Wapan prepare herbs for winter storage, and learned to stretch sinew for bowstrings with the younger girls. The stares still came. The whispers still followed her, but fewer now. And with less venom, the twins remained her closest connection. Luma and Nahi hovered near her like tiny guards, teaching her the Apache names for plants, laughing when she mispronounced them, fiercely proud whenever she got something right. They called her Isi, meaning new fire. She was starting to feel like less of a stranger, and then the trader came. Clara had gone to fetch a water jug from the edge of the village, where a low stream ran over stones. The sun was sharp that day, and the heat pressed against her like a weight. She knelt, filling the jug, when she heard a voice behind her. Well now, don't think I've seen you around here before. She stiffened immediately. A white man stood a few yards away. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an old army coat and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. He grinned like he was used to getting his way. I was just passing through, he added. Trading rifles, beads, furs, but hell, I'd trade half my wagon for you. Clara stood slowly, gripping the jug with both hands. Not interested, she said flatly. Don't gotta be interested to be useful, he muttered, stepping closer. What's a little settler girl doing out here, playing Apache bride? He reached toward her shawl. She slapped his hand away. The man's face twisted. You little, but he didn't get the rest out. A sudden wind seemed to shake the trees, and from the brush behind them came the sound of snapping branches and a low, steady thump of heavy steps. Then he appeared. Tohono. Towering, silent, shirtless. His body was streaked with gray ash as if he'd just walked from fire. His chest and arms glistened with sweat and earth, and in his right hand was a long, curved blade. The trader stepped back fast. I didn't mean nothing by it, he stammered. Just talkin'. Just Tohono didn't say a word. He stepped between Clara and the man, his massive body blocking her completely. His eyes burned like black coal. Then, with one fluid motion, he raised the blade and struck it across the trader's rifle, snapping the wooden stock in two. The man's mouth opened in shock. He didn't wait to recover. He turned and ran, nearly tripping over himself as he scrambled back to his wagon. The woods went silent again. Clara stared at Tohono's back, her breath coming fast. He turned to her. Did he touch you? He asked, his voice low, dangerous. No, she said, almost. Tohono's jaw clenched. He will not return. But if he does, he will not walk out next time. Clara swallowed. Her heart thudded in her chest. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. He would have left. Tohono stepped closer. The blade was sheathed now, but his presence was just as fierce. His chest rose and fell with quiet rage. No one touches what is under my protection, he said. She blinked. Is that what I am? There was silence between them again, thick, heavy. Then, softer, almost reluctant, he said, You are not yet my wife. But you are under my roof. You've slept in my land. You've eaten beside my fire. That means something. Clara's lips parted. He wasn't just a warrior. He wasn't just a mountain of stone and ash. He was a man who watched, who protected. And whether he admitted it or not, he cared. She stepped forward. Just slightly. Thank you, she said, looking up at him. His dark eyes searched hers. Then, almost like he couldn't stop himself, he reached out one rough, calloused hand, lifting her chin gently. You didn't run, he murmured. I've been running my whole life, she replied. But not from you. Tohono didn't answer. But the air between them changed. It was no longer just protection. It was pull, and Clara realized, in that quiet clearing, with her heart thudding like hooves on earth, this shirtless, wild man was no longer just a guardian. He was becoming a choice. Night fell quietly across the village, the sky painted in a swirl of stars so bright Clara felt she could reach out and touch them. The day's heat had faded, and a cool wind drifted through the pines. Most of the villagers had retreated to their lodges, but Clara remained outside, sitting beside the fire that had become her evening ritual. She could still feel the heat of Tohono's presence from earlier that day. Still remember his hand on her chin, the blade in his grip as he protected her. He hadn't said anything after that. He just walked away into the trees like always, quiet, controlled. But something had shifted between them, and Clara wasn't sure whether to chase it or be afraid of it. She was still staring into the fire when she heard his footsteps behind her. Not heavy like they'd been before, lighter, measured. She didn't turn. I thought giants didn't walk softly, she murmured. I'm not a giant, Tohono said behind her. I'm a man who keeps to himself, but your tongue, it's sharper than most women I've known. Clara smiled faintly. It saved me more times than a pistol. He walked around the fire and sat across from her. Shirtless again, he seemed to only wear his chest proudly and nothing more unless he needed to enter the village proper. His body bore the ash lines of the day's hunting rituals, but his expression was gentler than she'd ever seen. Long moment. They just listened to the fire crackle. Then he spoke. My daughters have not smiled like this since their mother died. Clara looked up, surprised by the softness in his voice. They watch you, learn from you, he went on. You don't treat them like broken birds. You speak to them like they matter. They do matter, Clara said simply. They saved me. He nodded. Yes, they found you first. But they chose you second. Clara tilted her head. What do you mean? Tohono's eyes met hers, steady and calm. There have been others, he said. Women the elders offered me. Women who came hoping to be safe or fed or tied to the strongest man in the village. And you said no to all of them? They were not chosen by my daughters, he replied. And my daughters, they are the only voice I trust more than my own. Clara felt something warm bloom in her chest. A strange, delicate ache. You listen to them that much? He didn't hesitate. Always. They carry their mother's spirit and their own strength. When they brought you here, I thought it was childish fantasy. And now? Now he paused. His gaze lingered on her for a long time, as if seeing more than her face, seeing the bruises time had left inside her. Now. I see what they saw, he said quietly. A woman who is not afraid of silence, or hard work, or me. Clara's breath caught. She looked down, gathering her thoughts. unsure if she was ready for what he might ask next, but what he said surprised her. "You are not bound to stay here. Clara," he said, "you are not a prisoner. You are not an offering. I am not a man who takes what isn't freely given." She looked up at him again, eyes shining with unspoken emotion. "Then why are you here tonight?" Tohono leaned forward, arms resting on his knees. "Because I want you to know," he said, "if you choose to stay, not for the girls, not for the food, but for me, then I will carry your burdens with mine. I will protect you as I protect them. I will never ask you to be anything but what you already are." He paused, then added with a ghost of a smile, "But I will expect your sharp tongue to calm at night." Clara laughed softly, and it caught in her throat. That might take time." "I have time," he said. She looked into his eyes. There was no demand there, no pressure, just presence. Quiet strength. The man who had once said he didn't need a wife was now asking not with words, but with honesty, if she wanted to be something more than a guest in his home. She reached across the fire, palm upward. Tohono looked at her hand for a second, then placed his own in hers. It was warm, calloused, steady. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of it," she whispered. "I am not asking for all of it now," he said. "I'm only asking if you'll stay one more day." She nodded slowly. "One more day," she said. And then another. And as they sat there in the firelight, his daughters sleeping nearby, the stars watching overhead, Clara realized she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was becoming part of something real. The morning sun filtered through the trees in golden streaks as Clara woke to the soft sounds of laughter, two young girls giggling nearby, chasing a squirrel with a piece of bread. She sat up slowly, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, and blinked into the brightness of a new day. Something was different. The heaviness she used to carry in her chest wasn't there. Not all of it, at least. It was being replaced with something steadier, something she didn't dare call peace just yet, but maybe belonging. Later that day, Clara walked with the girls to the river to wash laundry. The path curved between tall pines, and the twins chattered nonstop about birds, about berries, about how they thought their father secretly liked Clara, even though he never smiles at anyone but us. Clara laughed. "He smiled at me once or twice. One time he smiled when you yelled at him," the bolder twin Niwa said with wide eyes. "Nobody ever yells at him. He's not so scary," Clara replied. "He just looks like a mountain that can talk." Both girls giggled at that. Then, out of nowhere, Niwa asked, "Did the white men treat you bad before we found you?" Clara froze. Her hand, gripping the basket of damp linens, went still. She looked at the girls. Their young faces were open. "Curious, not cruel." "Yes," Clara said softly. "Some did, not all. But enough." There was silence for a moment. Then the quieter twin Tala looked up and whispered, "Some of our people were scared when Papa brought you here." "Scared? Of me?" Clara asked, surprised. "No," Tala said. "Scared of what you would do to him. They think white women bring nothing but sadness, that they lie, that they leave, that they break things." Clara swallowed the lump rising in her throat. "I'm not like that," she said. "I know." Tala said simply, "You look at him like he's just a man, not a monster." That evening, while tending to a stew outside the lodge, Clara watched Tohono return from hunting. His shoulders were broad, muscles flexing as he carried the carcass of a large deer over one shoulder, sweat glistening on his skin. Shirtless again, with black war paint smudged along his collarbone, he looked every bit the fierce warrior the villagers feared. But when his eyes found hers, he softened, and Clara didn't flinch, didn't look away. She offered him water. He took it from her hand and drank deeply. And when he handed it back, his fingers brushed hers longer than necessary. The connection was there again, unspoken, strong. "You hunted alone today," she said. "I needed to think," he replied. "About? You, the girls, the council, her." Brow furrowed. "What about them?" "They think you should leave if you're not going to stay." Clara's heart stopped for a moment. "Oh," she said quietly, "they say it's not right for you to take from us and give nothing in return." She stiffened. "I didn't ask to be given anything." "I know," he said, "but they are afraid. You are not Apache. You were not chosen by them." "I was chosen by your daughters," she said, lifting her chin, "and that made Tohonos." Lips twitch into something close to a smile, "which makes their complaints meaningless to me," he said. "But not to them. They need to see you give something back." "Something real." Clara straightened. "I can cook. I clean. I help with the children. They want a promise," he said simply. "And you?" "I want only what you're ready to give." Her breath caught. The wind moved through the trees behind them, and the girls' laughter floated from somewhere near the berry bushes. Clara stared into his eyes, dark, stormy, yet full of something she hadn't seen in a man's. Gaze in a long time, trust. "I don't know if I'm ready to make promises," she whispered. "Not yet," he nodded. "Then stay until you are." That night, she laid in her bedroll inside the lodge, eyes fixed on the stars peeking through the roof. The warmth of the twins curled on either side of her, their breathing even and peaceful. Outside, she could hear Tohono sharpening his blade by the fire. A soft, rhythmic scrape. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't a savior either. He was a man flawed, strong, grieving, and still standing. And maybe that's what made him perfect. That night, the sky was heavy with clouds, and the wind carried a distant rumble of thunder. Most of the village had settled in for the evening, smoke curling from chimneys, drums silenced, the laughter of children fading into quiet murmurs. But inside Tohono's lodge, the fire still crackled, casting flickering gold across the smooth walls and worn rugs. Clara sat near the hearth, stirring a pot of herb tea. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something else. Anticipation, the kind that settled deep in your stomach when something important was coming. Tohono was seated across from her, shirtless as always, his broad chest glinting with firelight. His arms were folded loosely across his knees. He hadn't said much all evening. Neither had she. But something hung in the air between them, thick as smoke. "Did your wife die suddenly?" Clara asked, breaking the silence. Tohono looked into the fire for a long time before answering. "She died screaming." Clara's heart clenched. She was taken by soldiers. 2 years after we were married. They thought we were hiding weapons. They burned our food, burned our home. His voice remained even, but his jaw clenched tight. "I wasn't there. I was out hunting with the men. When we returned, the lodge was ash. The girls were crying in the dirt. Clara didn't breathe. I found her body near the river. What they did to her," he shook his head. "I buried her with my hands. Swore I'd never let another woman near my family again." He turned his gaze to Clara, and for the first time, his voice cracked. "Until you." The fire popped. "I don't know what to do with that," he said. Clara rose slowly and crossed to sit beside him. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel his warmth. "My husband left me for a younger woman," she said quietly. "Took everything we built and walked away like it was nothing. After that, I was passed around from house to house, cleaning floors, living on scraps. I haven't had a home since." She looked at him, eyes soft. "I swore I'd never trust a man again." Tohono's brow furrowed. "But your daughters," she continued, "they saw me. Not as a servant, not as a burden. They saw me as someone who could belong again. I didn't believe them at first. But now." Now she was trembling. Tohono noticed. He reached forward, slowly, and placed one massive hand over hers. It was calloused and warm. Steady. You're still free, he said, voice low. I won't cage you, but if you stay, I will protect you, feed you, shelter you, and I will never let you cry alone again. Clara's throat tightened. She didn't speak. Instead, she lifted his hand and pressed it gently against her cheek. A single tear slid down her face and touched his knuckles. I don't want to leave, she whispered. Tohono moved closer, eyes never leaving hers. Then, carefully, so carefully, he brushed the tear away with his thumb and cupped her face in both hands. His forehead touched hers. Not a kiss, not yet, but a promise. They stayed like that for a long time. Two broken souls breathing the same firelight. Outside, the storm rolled over the mountains, but inside the lodge Clara felt safe for the first time in years. Not because he said the right words, but because he didn't need to. The storm passed by morning, leaving the world washed clean and glistening. The village awoke to birdsong and dew-slicked leaves, and the air smelled like sage and wet cedar. Clara stepped out of the lodge wrapped in a woven shawl the twins had made for her. It was stitched with symbols. She couldn't yet read stars, bear claws, a crescent moon, but she wore it proudly. She wasn't a stranger anymore. She was home. Luma and Nehi rushed to her side, their dark eyes glowing with mischief and joy. You're going to be our mother now, right? Nahi asked boldly. Clara smiled, brushing a braid from Luma's cheek. I suppose I already am. Tohono approached then, taller than any man in the village, his bare chest draped with a necklace of white stones and feathers. He carried in his hands a small carved bowl filled with ochre-colored paint. Without a word, he dipped his thumb in and gently pressed it between Clara's eyes. A sacred mark. A symbol of union, you sure? He asked in a low, steady voice. Clara nodded. Yes, not because she was desperate, not because she was obligated, but because she wanted to. The village gathered under a vast pine tree for the ceremony. The elders chanted, drums beat softly, and flower petals drifted in the wind. Clara stood barefoot in the earth, her simple dress fluttering. Her hands joined with Tohono's. When she looked into his eyes, she saw the storm he had survived and the calm he had built from its ashes. He had lost everything, so had she. But now under the thunder moon, they were choosing each other, choosing peace, choosing family. Later that night, the twins danced in the firelight, singing and laughing as Clara passed bowls of stew to the elders. Tohono stood near the fire, watching her with a softness in his expression no one else ever saw. When she caught his gaze, he tilted his head slightly, and she came to him. He didn't say anything, just opened his arms, and she stepped into them. The whole world quieted. No past, no pain. Just this, his strength, her warmth, and the future they had begun to build together.